With the weather getting worse and lockdown taking its toll here in the winter months, today's episode for sure will help warm you up, especially if you are in a dancing mood. Fans of hip-hop, rap, reggae, and dancehall, this one is for you. Releasing 2 new albums last year alone and currently reworking his old catalog for a new audience, guest SHANE SPARKZ dives into his early life in the Caribbean, how that affects his music today, as well as social issues like Black Lives Matter and a lack of education towards historical and systematic racism. You'll hear us also discuss a personal conflict that affected our friendship years ago and how growth, education, and forgiveness brought us back together and allowed us to sit down as friends today. So stand up, warm up those booties, and let's just jump right into today's episode of The Bomb with AUZZYNAPALM. Welcome back to The Bomb with AUZZYNAPALM, the most explosive podcast in Kingston, Ontario. And today, friends, I am joined with an artist, an activist, a father, college classmate, and friend. His name is SHANE SPARKZ. Shane, thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate you for having me on the show.
So I say artist because you mainly focus on music, but you do dabble in quite a bit. And I think it would be quite hard for me to put one genre on your music, even though I'd say it's hip-hop focused. A lot of it has dancehall influences, a little bit of reggae. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would say that's actually quite true because, from where I grew up and stuff like that, the influence of like dancehall itself and the culture itself kind of shows itself within my music, even when it's centered around one specific genre, for example, hip-hop and stuff like that. So yeah, I would definitely say it has that bit of flavor to it whenever I'm doing hip hop and stuff. So yeah.
For everyone listening, you actually grew up in Jamaica.
Yeah, I was born there, raised there up until I was 12 years old. So I came to Canada around August of like 2000. So yeah, lived here ever since then. But I jump from here to there as often as possible. Honestly, I can't even tell you how many times I've been back because I try to go back as much as possible, right? So yeah.
Well, and what was growing up in Jamaica like for you? I know growing up here, it's sort of known as almost a tourist destination. So it has to be interesting growing up in a place that in other parts of the world is known as that. It must impact you in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like whenever I go back, it's not really so much like a vacation. It's more kind of like I'm just kind of going back home. So growing up down there was a lot different than, how certain kids like grew up over here, obviously. So I much rather my kids actually grow up down there than up here, just because I want them to experience different things and not just be, cooped up at home and on some type of electronic device. Like I was always outside. I was always doing some type of activity that required me to, be outside and just be, physically active and stuff like that. Now, it was always a good thing, personally speaking. I mean, you run into your little life-threatening adventures here and there, but you're a kid at the same time. I mean, who hasn't had a few of those growing up and stuff? But yeah, it was definitely an experience growing up down there compared to living in, growing up in Canada. So.
Well, and I kind of know what you mean when it comes to not growing up in the city. I grew up way out in the country, and I always say to myself, when I have kids, I kind of want to be in that situation again because my upbringing made me who I am today. And a lot of the things I know city folk take for granted are things that I never thought I'd experience or live through. So I totally get that. When it comes to your early life, has that impacted your music?
More so whenever I kind of center around just doing dancehall itself or even reggae. So if I'm doing those specific genre, then I kind of just talk about like my experiences, like, growing up down there and what I've seen and what I know and kind of got to a terrible term, but like used to within the music itself. But, it's an everyday life, not just for what I've seen and grew up in, but like for like family and like friends that are still currently down there and living through it and all that stuff. So a lot of it touches on those past and present experience.
And when it comes to musical influences and people you listen to growing up, Were the artists different than what we have in North America? Were you listening to more Jamaican artists, or were you still on the mainstream stuff we would have had here at the time?
No, in all honesty, whenever I was like growing up down there and listening to music down there, it was strictly just like Jamaican artists and stuff like that. And I mean, we'd have our like one big North American artist and that we were like really into and stuff like that. They were more so singers, not really like hip hop artists. They were more so singers. So whenever I say singers, I mean like artists like Celine Dion, like
Right.
Whitney Houston, those artists from like way back in the 90s that were like huge and stuff like that. So those were as far as like North American influence, those were the type of music like we listened to, even just going to regular parties. Like you would hear grown men singing Celine Dion and stuff like that. Like it's nothing because it was so natural and there was no, like masculinity crisis or nobody felt no type of way when it comes to that. So that was one of the greatest things I think I appreciated like growing up down there too. There was just like you could be yourself and enjoy a certain type of music without being judged.
Right. That's a very interesting thing too to learn as a North American is that was kind of the music that your mom would throw on. And as a
Exactly.
kid, you might groan at it, but as an adult, I listen to so much music and I can appreciate so much about music. I think one of the things, and maybe I'm off with this connection, Jamaica's known for being such a passionate place. Those artists you all named, they're all love songs. They're all honest and they make you
Exactly.
feel. So that correlation kind of makes sense to me.
Exactly, right? So
Yeah.
even if you were to just kind of use it towards, even for example, like Bob Marley himself, Bob Marley's one of the biggest artists to ever, if not the biggest artist to pretty much come out of Jamaica.
He is to reggae music what the Beatles were to rock.
So
Yeah.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Great comparison. So for him, his music was always about like uplifting and love and positivity and all that stuff. So it's just like I said earlier, like you can see grown men singing Celine Dion and Whitney Houston because that was what we were like prideful of, like, you know what I mean, like just being ourselves and sharing the love. Like our motto is literally out of many, one people, which means no matter who you are, how you look, we're all one people at the same time. And it's one love has always been, put into like the reggae genre of the music and stuff like that. Like you don't really
Hmm.
hear it as much in like the dancehall, but like that's why they differentiate like the two genres and say either dancehall or reggae. But yeah, within reggae you'll hear the One Love. Even Bob Marley's song One Love is still one of the biggest songs out there right now. So yeah, it's definitely influential.
And it's a beautiful lifestyle too to live by. I mean, more people should include it in the way they live. I mean, I'm trying to live the older I get. I know I haven't lived a way in the past perfectly that I would like, but absolutely the older I get, one love.
Yeah, the more you learn, as you get older, man. And it's the same thing on my end. Truth be told, I wasn't. I was very ignorant of a lot of things growing up as well too, and like even growing up back home as well too. There were certain things that we were also taught down there, and it was just like when I first came to like Canada and stuff. I mean, I still had those type of mentalities growing up and stuff like that. Believe it or not, up until I went to school with you and interacting with certain people for the first time. So it was always, this one type of mentality that I had, and I was just like, you know what? Upon conversing with certain people, and I was just like, they're no different. They're the same, exact same as me,
Hmm.
right? They're the exact same as me. So I had to learn to change my mentality and my outlook on a lot of things when it comes to certain things that I was like kind of like grew up in, and was taught from an early age. So definitely gotta. As I got older, I'm more mature with everything I do and I say, and kind of how I approach life altogether.
And the college stuff I want to touch on again later because there is something that was kind of one of the bases of wanting to sit down with you today. But
Hmm.
one of the interesting things you said about back home that I really do want to talk about before we move on to other stuff is the
Yeah.
lack of masculinity. You said that's very interesting to hear because even me growing up, I wouldn't consider myself or my dad a man's man by any means, but
Hmm.
very much that masculinity was there growing up where you got to work. And if you're not working, you're not a
Hmm.
man. That kind of thing was even there for me growing up. So to hear that, you know, wasn't necessarily part of your upbringing is very interesting to hear.
Hmm. I mean, it was there. It just wasn't in your face as how they push it over here, and you
The
have to be, you know,
machismo.
yeah, exactly, right. So it was definitely there, but at the same time, there was still that freedom to just kind of like express yourself and be who you are whenever it comes to, you know, whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is you were passionate about and stuff like that. Nobody would make fun of you or laugh at you for, you know, whatever it is you was interested in. And so definitely never really had an issue when it comes to, like, you know, being the man's man. And, you know, because I mean, I think I talked about it a little while back where I was kind of just saying that in North America, you would typically find that it's like ruled where, you know, the female would kind of like be the stay-at-home mom, and she cooks and she cleans, and that role is specifically for the female. I'm just like, in Caribbean men, that's not a thing.
Oh yeah.
There's no gender specific roles. Like, everybody does everything. A man cleans, a man cooks, a man washes clothes and stuff like that. That's how you are taught all these things from our parents, like for growing up, because, you know, you have to be able to take care of yourself as you get older.
And that doesn't really surprise me either because I've always even joked about with you, you know, I call you a gentle giant. You're one of the biggest people I know, but you're also one of the kindest and gentlest people I know. So you can definitely see that
Yeah.
in, you know, how you were raised for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
always been in our upbringing and stuff like that. So there's no gender specific roles. It's like everybody does everything.
Hmm.
It's really that
Hmm.
simple.
So why did you actually end up moving to Canada? What brought you and your family here?
It was not so much of a choice, truth be told. Now I'm looking at the snow and thinking, like, yeah, if I had the choice to, I would have definitely stayed down there. But no, my mom moved here when she was like young, like I wanted like around 25 and stuff like that. I was still fairly young myself, so I was about like one. So she moved here, and she was just like, you know, the lifestyle up here is better. It would be better to, you know, raise kids up here and stuff like that. So, you know, she did what she could for a couple of years, and ended up like applying for us to be able to come up here. And then finally, I think we got through like around 2000. So everything was set for us to come here into like early 2000. So that's how, when we landed, which was, like I said, August of 2000. So it was more so just trying to find a better lifestyle and having us closer to her, which is why we ended up moving from there, coming here.
And so that was the process. Did it take that amount of time, or did it just kind of take that amount of time for her to feel comfortable bringing you up?
It was more so just kind of like when she first got here, she wanted to like land on her, like be able to, you know, have her own stuff and have a place set up and everything going for
Set
her.
her roots
So
and
exactly,
yeah.
you know, kind of plant her roots and get everything going for herself. And yeah, you know, it took some time for her to get all that going, and finally being able to comfortable enough to just kind of say, all right, well, I'm in a good space. Everything's going good right now. I would like for them to be up here with me as well. So that's kind of was the process. Yeah, it did take her, you know, a solid, like I said, 11 years or so. But the point is, she got it done.
Single mother then when you guys got here? Did she raise you alone?
No, 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 no. She was actually with someone, and she was actually pregnant at the time with my sister,
Oh, okay.
my youngest sister at the
Hmm.
time. So she was still, we were in a single parent home. It was kind of like a stepfather situation.
Right,
So
right. And so you moved here pretty much right before high school then, wouldn't you have?
yeah, yeah, like literally at 12 years old, I came here. So
Was there much of a culture shock for you?
oh, huge difference because I got here August, but I had to start school September.
Right.
So you can imagine this is like, oh, 3 weeks to lose my whole accent. That's not going to happen. So I had like this really, really hardcore accent where nobody could understand me. Like the teachers couldn't understand me at all. Thankfully, there was, you know, there were these other kids who were also Jamaican, like they had Jamaican parents who only spoke Patois to them, so they understood me, but the teachers couldn't understand me, or understand me. So what they would do was they would translate
Oh,
what I was
wow.
saying to her and to all the teachers. So the difference down here is, or up here, I should say, is for each subject, you go to a whole different classroom. But you
Hmm.
have your homeroom and all that stuff. So homeroom is basically, it's the same people you go to exact same class for math, English, science, geography, all that stuff, right? Down there, it would be one teacher teaching like three subjects. So you'd only change class after like 3 subjects, and then you go to it. So you only interact with maybe like one or two, like 2 to 3 teachers, maybe.
Right, right.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's still a big difference for me. I'm meeting all these new teachers and can't remember their names. They can't understand me. So it's just like, it was challenging at first and stuff like that. And then they opted to put me in like ESL. So, ESL is like, English as a second language and
Yep.
stuff like that. But English isn't my second language. English is actually my first language. It's just broken English because it's technically the Queen's English because of, colonizing. We won't get into that, but you get the point.
I do,
What I'm
yeah.
saying, though. Yeah. So it's English. It's just broken English. So I would say certain words different from like how you would say some words, but it means the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But they couldn't understand that. So they opted to put me in ESL, and my mom was just like, nah, he just needs a little bit of time to adjust. And from then on, she would like teach me how to read properly, teach me how to write properly, teach me how to pronounce words properly. And even my cousins were helping with stuff like that as well too. For example, I think I was at my cousin's house in Brampton one time, still with the hardcore accent, and we're walking, and me and my cousin that's about the same age as me and his sister, we went out to go grocery shopping, and we're coming back, and I was like, yo, I said it like this, oh, beg a piece of that now, and then my cousin Delane was just like, no, that's not how you say it up here. Is can I have a piece of that, basically? And it's just like, that's how you would say it so that they could properly understand you. It was just these little things that they would help me with, and that's how my English improved to what it is right now. Some people say they can still hear like an accent or accent. I don't really hear it, so
It's hard to hear your own, right, when you've grown
that's
up with it
that's
and had
true.
it change. For me, actually, growing up, my godbrothers, they were from Jamaica, so
Mm.
I kind of experienced the same thing when I was younger, where they were speaking to me in patois, and their parents would be like,
Mm.
"Hey, Anthony, boys, no."
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand, especially since it's spoken so fast as well too. It's hard to catch.
Fast is the issue. Yeah. Well, for me, half my hearing's gone in my one ear. So it's when people have accents, it's not so much I can't understand them, but it's like, I just need you to go a bit slower because I have a
Yeah,
harder time hearing you. Now, did you move straight to Toronto?
yeah. Right away, we were living in Toronto, so I went to school out there for like a year. Was out there, and then my mom was actually planning to move sooner, but because I was kind of just already in the classroom and everything was going fine, she decided to just kind of hold off and wait for us to officially move. So once we like officially moved, that was when I completed like schooling out there, and then I was starting a whole new school year out here. So we ended up moving west to Kitchener.
So moving directly into the big cities too, was that a
Hmm.
hard adjustment for you?
Yeah, it kind of was because I didn't know anything as far as like, taking the TTC or the bus and how everything operated. Everything was like new to me as I had zero knowledge of how the city itself operated over here because,
Hmm.
it's completely different. So I had to like literally learn by getting lost, sometimes on purpose, just to say, all right, I've been here before. I know this is not where I'm trying to go again. I'm trying to go again. So make sure you hop off here and then switch over to the other side. So you're getting, it was always confusing, but I definitely got it down pat. And I was like, all right, I think I got the hang of it now.
Toronto area, the GTA too, is one of the bigger hip hop rap capitals in Canada. Was it
Hmm.
moving to this region that kind of got you interested in it?
Not so much, truth be told, because even when I was out in Kitchener, like young and stuff, like we used to do music as a hobby and stuff like that, and we
Right.
had a whole bunch of stuff recorded. Truth be told, I wish I could find some of it, but I don't know if I'll be able to find any of that stuff. But it would have been cool. It would be cool to. But no, it was definitely a lot easier to get into it because a lot of people around here was also interested in doing the same thing as well. And some people took it, way more serious than others. For us, it was more so just like a hobby, so we could just be able to hang out with our friends and go to the studio and all be together and all just like write, music and release it. And it was really just a fun thing to do as long as we were able to, hang out together pretty much. So
Well, I know when I was doing music in high school too, my mom would always say, I'd rather you guys in here making noise than out there doing God knows what. So,
exactly.
when abouts did you actually start making music? Like, how old were you when you really kind of knew you had that in you to make music?
So kind of like around the time when I really decided to kind of like take it serious was more so like I want to say like 27-ish is when I was like, all right, well, you know what? I stopped doing it for a while. I wasn't doing it for a long time and stuff like that. I just kind of fell off of it and stuff like that. And then I kind of got back into the groove of doing it and writing it. And then I'd put these little songs that I would record myself up on, say, you know, like my Facebook or anything that I could upload music on. And then I realized like, yo, people were actually listening. Like a dancehall song I did a little while back. I realized like I don't know what it's sitting at now. I haven't checked it in a while, but after a little while of me checking, it was at like 30,000 views and listens and stuff like that. And I was like,
Wow.
wait, people are actually paying attention to this stuff. I was like, all right, cool. Let me go and take it a bit more serious and see what happens. And that's when I started like recording and kind of experimenting with like mixing the different sounds to kind of like join hip hop and dancehall together to kind of create a sound I thought would be, you know, aesthetically pleasing to me and to others, hopefully. And it kind of worked for a little bit. And then I was just kind of like, you know what? People are like, oh, there'd be people that be like, oh, the dance hall sounds better, or there'd be people like the hip hop sounds better. So I was like, you know what? It's fine. I could just separate the two and then do each one however I feel. And that's how I've kind of been doing it for a little while. But then, you know, as you know, like now I kind of more focus on like the hip hop side of it and the rap side of it. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I've even been mixing it with like the R&B as well too. So getting singers to sing on my songs now and stuff like that. So my music doesn't just kind of gravitate to just one specific audience. Now it's for as much people as possible, like women and men and all that
Hmm.
stuff. So
Well, we were actually talking about that off pod before we sat down for the interview. Is your last two releases, Deja
mhm.
Vu and Deja Vu Catering? I asked you specifically if, because I personally like Deja Vu more because it had more of an
Mhm.
aggressive, in your
Yeah,
face hip hop rap feel. And I asked you if that was intentional, and you told me that it
yeah,
was. And again, that feeling is very noticeable between your works. You are able to get across a different feeling. It's not just, to me, it's not just generic rap, right?
exactly.
All your releases have an album, and I've been listening through them before we sat down for our interview. And like you said, even though your dance stuff has a completely different feel, it's still Shane Sparks at the end of the day. I
Exactly.
hear you. Now, were your parents supportive of you doing music?
Actually, yeah, she's been very supportive of me doing the music as well. My pops as well. He'll listen to the songs and be like, "Oh, is this you?" I'll be like, "Yeah, this is me," and he'll just kind of give me his input on it and stuff like that. My mom has always been supportive of anything artsy that I've wanted to do. She was the one that was even taking me to auditions at first to kind of get my foot in that part of it as well, and helping me figure out where I could possibly even go to school because I was so interested in just being or doing anything that brought or lit any sort of fire under me basically. So
Mm-hmm.
she's been my like number one supportive person when it comes to doing this stuff, and she always asks me how things are going. Even if it's not going good, she wants to hear all the bad stuff too, you know. But yeah, she's just not so supportive of like the cussing and all that stuff in the music
Right.
as any parent would be, wouldn't be. But she's just like, you can always make music without having to cuss or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And then I'll do songs where it was like absolutely like no cursing or anything like that. And she'd be like, you see, I told you. But I'm like, I know I could do it. I never said I couldn't do it. I just, it's sometimes I just kind of want to get aggressive with this, and it just works this way for me. So, those songs, you don't have to listen to those. Like, it's okay. Like,
Well, and it kind of goes with the rap culture. I mean, as far as the lyrics go, yeah, sometimes they're a
exactly,
bit dirty and explicit. But
exactly.
myself, my first rap that I listened to, my older brother was into it, so I started listening pretty early, and he listened to Dr. Dre, NWA, and
Mm,
Eminem, the mainstream stuff, but it was
yeah.
there for me. And I remember one day driving home with my mom, and it was Clean Out My Closet by Eminem was on, and I forget what he said, but she turns it down, looks at us in the car. Do you guys understand what he means when he says that? No, mom, we just like the song. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Turns it
He
back
turns it
up.
back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the struggles I find with getting people to listen to rap, and I don't even make it, is that so many people do rap now that I find people are a little desensitized and they don't take it seriously when you say, "Hey, my buddy does rap and like he's really good." And
Yeah,
even personally, once I started hearing your stuff, for me even it was like, "Holy crap, this is Shane. Like this is
yeah,
legitimate good music." And a big thing about me that everyone knows is I do not lie to make people feel better. So when I give a compliment, it's a genuine compliment. So when I say you make good hip hop, good rap, good dance music, it is very good. So one of the struggles with getting people to listen to your music, as I'm sure you know, is the dilution of rap. What other
it's true.
struggles do you think are prevalent that you face when it comes to making and getting your music out to people?
I think one of the biggest ones is just really just the listening for me, truth be told, because it's like it doesn't really take much for you to simply just click a link and then the music automatically just starts playing for you and getting people to even go in for a minute or whatever. It's like, oh, you rap too, all right, well, cool, that's dope. You know what I mean? It's just like, yo,
Right, right.
but listen to the music, and I understand, like you said, it's the dilution is what kind of turns people off from wanting to even give that music a chance, because it's like I've heard some stuff or people have told me to listen to stuff before and it's like, oh man, it didn't go so well. Like what if it's the same situation here or whatever? So it's this idea, like not knowing like what people have to go through, especially the artists themselves. Like, for me, it cost me like $60 to book a studio for an hour, and then to get mixing and mastering, that's another $200 for me to get my songs mixed and mastered. And if I want to do visuals, depending on who I'm going with, I'm looking at from anywhere from like $500 to $1,000 for visuals. So essentially, one song could be costing you, you know what I'm saying, like at least $1,200 if when you think about it, more if anything.
Yep.
And then to even try and promote the song like on these major platforms that are out here now, like they charge you now. They charge you 150, 180, $200. So you're really looking like $1,400 to get your song, your visuals, and promoting your stuff all out there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like all people ask for you to do is simply go watch and listen, or go listen, and you can't even give them like that little bit of like that 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes of like attention. Is It's frustrating. It definitely gets frustrating, especially when like the music itself, like yourself, is good,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like even with me trying to push the Don't Rush song as well too, like which is doing not so bad, but I felt like it can do better, and I feel like every time I even have you heard of like Clubhouse? Clubhouse has been
That new app that everyone's
that new
using.
app that
Yep,
everyone's,
yep.
yeah, right. So I've been on Clubhouse for a little bit now, and you can find anybody on there. I'm talking about like people who are A&Rs for like big record companies. That like these guys are all big artists. These guys are all on here. These guys are all in there on the chat room, and they'll do something where they give you the opportunity to kind of like play your music, and then they'll give you like an input and stuff like that. And I've been in a couple of those chat rooms myself, and I played the Don't Rush song for them, and every time I hear, oh, that's a radio record, that's a hit record, that's a radio record, I'm like, all right, dope. And then I'll get people in my DMs that'll be like, hey, that's a dope song. Can I play it on the radio? And I'm like, yeah, cool, sure. But then they don't end up playing the song, or they don't tag me in anything. And so I don't know if they're, you know what I mean? So it's just like they'll tell you one thing, but then like do another,
Yep.
and it's frustrating because it's like if you say it's a hit song, it's a radio song, it should be on the radio. If if you are one of these DJs or A&R people who think, well, this is really good stuff, reach out to the person and actually like commit to what you say you're going to do. So I think
Yeah.
that's the most frustrating part about it, is just getting people to listen and pay attention.
And another tough thing too is these platforms and their copyright restrictions. For example, I had my producer friend a few episodes ago and I wanted to showcase his music, just little chunks of the audio in between.
Mm-hmm.
But because he has his stuff on Spotify and on YouTube, the copyright stuff, he just let me know right away. He's like, no, your episode will get flagged for copyright infringement because those songs are now on other platforms, right?
That's true. And I
Yep.
mean, if he's using a third party to distribute his music too, like I am as well, like I use TuneCore
Yep.
to distribute mine.
And
So
I use Anchor for the podcast, so same thing. Like,
right, so they have their own platform that they be putting stuff up on. So as soon as they hear that the little snippet of anything, right away you get an email saying, copyright, da 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 da, and all of a sudden you can't do anything with that episode because of that little, And I mean, I do own my music outright. Like I
Hmm.
own everything. I just
Yeah.
distribute my music through that platform. So nobody can tell me what I can and can't do with my music and stuff like that. So I could easily say you can dispute it, and I can email them and be like, hey, listen, there's this person who used a song of mine and they posted it up on, I don't know, YouTube or wherever. So allow them to be able to do that. Like they can't say no to me
Right.
because it's my song. I own everything. I own 100% of everything I distribute now, anyways. Or actually, ever since Bubblegum. Bubblegum was the first song I distributed that I owned everything from, and then ever since then, owned all my music that I distribute on Spotify and all the other major platforms. So
That's awesome too, because going forward, knowing that it's all yours will make things a lot easier.
exactly.
And you talked about the cost that goes into getting one song alone out. And with the audio platforms, I don't think people realize just how little they actually pay in listening and ad revenue.
Yeah.
So on Spotify, I believe your top songs around what, 30, 40,000 plays?
The top one, I believe, is sitting at like 35, almost 30, a little under 40.
And if you don't mind, for everyone listening, transparency wise, how much do you actually make off of 35,000 listens?
No, honestly, I have not really seen an increase in anything as far as like revenue comes from Spotify. So I have TuneCore breaks down everywhere that people like say purchase songs or download songs or anything or whatever.
Right.
And majority of my revenue has been coming from YouTube, believe it or not.
Really nice.
Majority of it has been coming from like YouTube royalties and stuff like that from like old stuff, but it doesn't tell me specifically like what song. So it could
Oh,
be
okay.
the entirety of like the EP itself or whatever. But I don't really make like crazy amount. The most money I've ever made or I've ever seen in my on my TuneCore account is like $100. You know what I mean? So it's
Yep.
not like that's only enough for like an hour of studio session compared to like what I've put in already. So yeah, it's not really that much, man.
Yeah, well, and that's why I asked, because one of the things that I like to showcase on this show is the work people put into their passions and their love. So, again, just to mention, when I sat down with the producer friend, he talked about how many hours he puts into one song alone, just sitting there perfecting it. So now to hear
Mm-hmm.
the musician side of what they have to put into that song, so it's really starting to paint a picture of just
Oh
what
yeah,
it takes to get one song out, how much money and how little, nothing, like $100 is
practically.
nothing, because
Yeah,
you've got multiple albums, multiple songs, multiple
exactly.
videos.
So
And it would be nice if these passions turn into, you
some
know,
sort of revenue.
absolutely. And
So
and it hurts too, having such talented people as friends in your life. And just same thing you said, knowing if it got into the right person's ears, yeah, it would be a radio
would
song.
it would definitely be a radio song, and they would definitely want to invest in it and stuff like that. So
Yeah. With being in the rap and hip hop industry, what are some unique experiences so far you've got to have, be it shows, people you've met?
I've done shows out here, and I've been asked to do shows elsewhere as well too, which I never got around to like doing them because some situation might have happened or whatever. But I have done shows, which was kind of nice, and I did I did meet with this dope artist from Toronto. Also, his name is Kane, and they kind of have their label called Secret Society, and they were I was kind of work with them for a little bit as well too,
Hmm.
and he's done tour like this guy's toured like outside the country and done touring with different types of people and stuff like that. One of the dope things about meeting this guy was, he was able to let me come to a Tech Nine concert, backstage pass and
Oh,
everything.
wow.
Yeah, so
Cool.
I did that and kind of been back and forth with them, but they were kind of centered around, I don't know, it's just because when you're new and you don't really have a following per se,
Hmm.
it's hard to work with like these independent artists because I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, it's like for me to just willfully sign over like 100% of my masters and 100% of my publishing and all that stuff. It's knowing what I know now. I just wouldn't be able to do that, right? So that's why I've kind of like, backed away from that situation. And, I mean, we still talk, and we've done songs and stuff together that hasn't even been released because, for whatever reasons, he's holding on to them. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I'm not too worried about that. But at the
Right.
same
Yeah.
time, it's more so like, keeping the relationship going and stuff like that. So because I've decided to keep the relationship going, like, he'll still post even my stuff right now. He'll still invite me to like shows that they'll be doing. And if I can make it, I can make it. But if I can't, I can't go. So that's always good to maintain that friendship and that relationship, regardless of how, things might have turned out.
Right. And you have a lot of features on your albums. How do you meet these artists? Are they mainly friends or is it through networking?
It's through my music as well too. Like they might have heard something and they'll comment on it or they'll message me, and it's also through networking too. Because the dude that I record with, he's an engineer, so he meets a ton of different artists on a
Right.
daily basis because people are coming to recording on a day, and I grew up with them since we were like super young, so he knows me like pretty well. So anytime I tell him I'm looking for something specific, he knows exactly who to send me to or who to send towards me. So when I was asking him for somebody to sing the hook I wrote on "Give It All," he was like, "Yo, Tariq is a dope singer. I think you should check him out. I think you would really like him." And he's on that kind of like that dancehall Caribbean vibes as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out and I checked out his music, and I was like, "Yo, this is exactly what I'm looking for." And he has been such a dope artist that from "Give It All," which was released maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, now up until
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm still making music with this guy, right? So
Yep.
that tells you that I think he's a dope artist, and we have a good amount of songs together. I put him on WIFE. He's on "Touching You." He's on "Not a Player," and he's on other stuff. Like he's such a great artist to work with that I really enjoy working with this dude. So it's all been through like networking, and then a DJ out here that I also grew up with did a compilation of like the city's artists. So he did took a song that was big from that artist and put it on like a mixtape basically, and
Oh,
he
that's really
released it.
cool.
Yeah, right. So he released it and he tagged every artist in it. And I was going through and I was listening to the songs, and certain artists that I never even knew were out here. And then I came across this guy named Vincent Xavier, which is from the song "I Like." And I was like, "Yo, this guy can sing. This guy's dope." I'm getting that like little Chris Brown vibes a bit. So I was like, "Oh, I have the perfect song for him." And that's how I've kind of been doing it when it comes to getting the features. I wanted all singers for this part two of Deja Vu because, like I said, the songs were catered towards like a female audience.
Well, like I said to you again when we were speaking about it before the interview, it's got a much sexier feel.
Exactly right. That was exactly what I was going for.
All your features also feel really natural too. It doesn't ever feel forced, like, oh, I want to work with this person because, they might have clout here, or,
Yeah.
this person worked with such and such. All of them just feel like so natural. They fit the songs, in my opinion, perfectly. And you picking the artists that you have has really shown its strength in the tracks.
Oh, definitely. Exactly. That was the whole purpose of it, truth be told, because like I said, like I heard these guys' music first and I was like, yo, this guy would be perfect, or this girl would be perfect for this song. So I kind of picked it based off of what I heard, not so much what I saw.
One last question before we move on to more of the activism kind of thing. Where did the name Shane Sparks come from?
Shane Sparks kind of the last part of when I was thinking of aliases as far as what would work for me growing up and stuff like that, I was just like, a lot of the names that I kind of like, people are just kind of like, no, that wouldn't work or whatever. Like whenever I was out here or whatever, and like, as a teenager, I was doing what I was doing. Like people used to call me like Beast or whatever. So that's the name a lot of like people knew me as out here because just me being me out here and the things I was doing and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the name that ran that a lot of people still call me out here. That because that's what they're so like accustomed to at this point. So I was just like, I need something that's going to gel well with like, the industry and that's going to not come off as like aggressive or combative or anything like that. And I was just like, just go with your name. I was just like, my name is O'Shane. I just took off the O part of it and I just went with Shane. And the Sparks, it was just kind of, I like that. I was just like, oh, I wanted to kind of like, spark something on their ass. And I was just like, well, you know what? Sparks kind of sounds dope. But then I was looking into it to see if like by chance anybody else had the name. Sure enough, somebody else does. So I was like, just switch up the S to a Z, and that'll be what differentiates you from him. And that's how I've kind of been running with it, and that's how I got the name Shane Sparks and stuff like that.
Well, it's got alliteration too, which is always catchy.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So you need something that rolls off the tongue quite smooth.
So again, one of the main reasons I actually wanted to sit down and talk with you today is on social media, you're one of my go-to voices for civil activism and Black rights in general. When it comes to speaking on the matters, you're quite outspoken, but you have such a compassionate and educational way of going about it. So I
Mm-hmm.
know one of the things I struggled with last year is when All Lives Matter became a thing, for example. I knew a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who are the most loving people that I know, and they totally misunderstood the whole concept of it. And
Mm-hmm.
as a white man, I could only ever explain it so well to them. So I actually kind of wanted to touch on Black Lives Matter, especially going into 2021 with America under new leadership. Just coming from you yourself, why is All Lives Matter a negative towards the Black Lives Matter movement? And then what do you think we need to do going forward in 2021, especially as allies?
The reason why it's an issue is because it was created in light of like the Black Lives Matter. It was simply created to combat Black Lives Matter. No person of color ever said all lives don't matter. No person of color will ever say, they don't agree with that statement, because it's a very true statement. All lives do matter. The difference is what they fail to realize is whenever we say all lives matter, or whenever we say, sorry, Black Lives Matter, it's simply to say, okay, value our lives on the same level, the same equal level as everybody else's, or to be more specific, as a white person's life. Value us the same way, you would a white person's life. And that has been the whole background of like what Black Lives Matter is. It's not to say, oh, well, only Black Lives Matter. No one has ever said that. So the idea of people like thinking, oh, well, we don't support this because it's racist, and it's ignorant to me for them to be saying that, because they didn't even take the time to even do a little bit of research to kind of understand what the movement itself was about. It
Exactly.
was
Yeah.
never about like an organization itself. It was literally the lives of a human being, and that's what it's always been about. And even when you show these people statistics on certain things, and they'll look at it and be like, well, that's not true, or they'll basically deny it, or kind of avoid it altogether because they don't want to talk about it. And it's like, come on, like it's not going to be that difficult for you to have this conversation, and simply listen
Mm-hmm.
to what I'm telling you. I'm not creating these scenarios in my head. I'm not telling you that, oh, like I went through this situation, and it traumatized me, and this is why I don't trust like police officers. And this is why I say, the police should be defunded, because we should reallocate funding to different programs to help with this problem you guys happen to see within the Black community. Because just as much as you guys see the problem, we also see it too. So how about helping us solve that problem, right? You want to change the outlook or the perspective on Black people from, or the typical views of them going forward. Put the funding into the programs or into these low income, communities that would help those kids from a young age. You
Mm-hmm.
can't afford soccer? Okay, cool. Let's create a program that helps you, or help these kids that can't afford, equipment for that specific sport. You want to play hockey? Sure, why not? There's a program for that too. Oh, you're not really into the sports. You into chess? You want to learn how to do chess? All right, let's do the same thing. Arts, music, the same. That was the whole idea behind it. But then when they hear defund the police, it's all like, well, who are you gonna call? We said defund, defund.
That one
That's what
always
we.
drove me crazy, especially too,
Yeah,
because money is such a made up concept that people complaining that they're going to have less to work with. It's like, one, they only need that much because of the issues themselves cause.
exactly.
And two, we make up money. So taking away this made up budget isn't going to affect anything, especially if we reallocate it into mental health services, addiction
Exactly.
services.
Hmm.
And the few cities that have started to do mental health to nonviolent crime, sending mental
Yeah.
health workers, the stats are already showing less violence in response, less issues in response. So
Hmm.
again, like statistics don't lie, numbers don't lie.
Exactly. They don't lie. And it's just short. For example, like I feel like the other it was probably a few months back where the police were called to deal with a mental issue patient, and they were told beforehand that, he has a mental disorder. And sure enough, they go in there and they shoot the guy and kill him. And it's just like, but you guys were informed beforehand. So why did it end up being, you guys had to kill the guy for him, like rushing you? You guys should have been prepared for that. You weren't. You weren't. And I'm not saying being a police is easy. Your job is definitely not easy. You deal with a lot of stressful things on a day-to-day basis. We
Sure,
understand that. But
absolutely, yeah.
imagine if you didn't have to. Imagine if you could go to work and simply deal with crime. That's it. Then your stress level for you and for your department would go down significantly. All we're saying is put that funding elsewhere, and have a different, number for people to call when dealing with certain type of people, whether it be mental health. If it's crime, it's definitely for you. If it's, petty stuff like here and there, obviously, it's still going to be for you. But at the same time, it has nothing to do with like though. So it's just weird how these people all of a sudden like not want to listen to what we're saying whenever we said, um, defund the police, or, stop killing, black people or shooting black people. Like their first response is to shoot. And it's just like, yo, you guys need better training. And then again, back to stats. Like I can't remember who it was that broke it down for how many people they've killed in like Sweden and different countries and stuff like that, like UK as well too. Yeah,
Every country in the last 10 years, I think it is 1 year in the States or something. Not even.
dude, not even. In 20 years, I believe, I can't remember where it was. In 20 years, there's one country that's only had to resort that's only had fatal shootings, 20 fatal shootings in 20 years. 20 years, guy. And I'm thinking like that's one day in
That's a
like the
day or a month
States.
in America, depending on. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like
Yeah.
one day. And it's just like, that's horrible, man. And it's all due to lack of training. It's really all due to lack of training and an understanding for the community itself. Like, you got to understand, you chose this profession. You chose to become a police officer because you want to do good.
And another thing I think that's difficult with being on the ally side of things is admitting when you're wrong and putting your pride aside. I know you and I, this is actually what I was going to touch back on from the college years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely, back in the day, I misspoke and said an absolutely hurtful, prejudice, and racist comment in my class. And it took years for me to realize, one, that I was in the wrong, and two, just how powerful my words can be because, again, just lack of education
Mm-hmm.
on knowing. For me, having grown up, you know, primarily white towns, not
Mm-hmm.
really having any friends of color, just not
Mm-hmm.
knowing how strong those words were. It's something that, as you can tell by the change in my tone here, it's something I
Yeah.
regret to this day and I'm embarrassed by, but it's also something I want to be transparent about because years later, I reached out to you and, not only were you willing to accept the apology. We're now sitting down, as friends and having a
Yeah.
conversation because I was able to realize that my words had such strength and I was wrong. And again, I think that's an issue with a lot of people is they just don't want to admit when they're wrong and put that pride aside. And again, lack of education too towards
Hmm.
sensitivity, how much words have impact, and also just what words and phrases come from racist origins.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I also I want to say like Killer Mike put it the best, and he said, I'm kind of paraphrasing here. He said something along the lines of, it's not necessarily white people's fault that they don't understand the historical context behind these words because they weren't taught better. The history that they were taught is different. It's not the correct history. So he said, if we were to change the curriculum when it comes to history class and teach the correct history, then perhaps like these kids growing up would understand better and realize the hurtfulness and the just the nastiness behind like saying certain words to certain people. And I feel like that would definitely change or increase how people see and understand people of color. And I 100% I 100% agree with him. Actually, not kind of, I 100% agree with him. He's absolutely right. A lot of people, whenever they say, certain things, it's all due to ignorance. They don't understand it, and they don't understand why it's such a hurtful, word or anything of that sort. It's just like, Google is free nowadays. Use it to the best of your abilities. Just look up anything that people. There's this thing called white fragility. Like they feel like, oh, whenever a person of color tells them something, it's simply to attack them. No, it's really not.
No.
We're simply saying like, yo, listen, it's not how, or it's not you saying the word and then realizing like, oh, okay, well, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have said that or whatever. It's you shouldn't have said the word in the first place because you should have understood why you shouldn't have said the word in the first place. And again, it goes back to it not being your fault because you weren't taught correctly. So it's all, you boil it down all to ignorance.
Well, and you nailed it there, right? It took years of self education to understand why I was in the wrong. And being a young man, too, at the time, instead of sitting down and hashing it out at the time, so long went by because of just, again, lack of education on the topic. And again, this is something I'm open about because it changed the trajectory of my life in the sense that not owning up to my words, I lost all my friends. I pretty much stopped going to school. And I'm not saying that as a poor me thing. I'm just letting
Mm-hmm.
people know that as your words carry a lot of importance. And
Exactly.
again, I share this because, the whole overlay of the pod is growth, education, and learning. And I would feel wrong if I wasn't honest about this with everyone.
Exactly.
And again, it's such a big part of you and me, right? We
Yeah.
were able to overcome that. And again, I think that's something that people need to know.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a tough thing to kind of hear, and I was just like, nah, that's not true. Like at first, in all honesty, I was like, nah, that's not really. I don't see it. It's just like, did he really? And then all of a sudden, it was just like, well, yeah, he kind of did, and I was just like, but I mean, at first, I was just like, I didn't hear it personally, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's still holds weight coming from other persons of color who are basically offended by it and all that stuff. So it was definitely a learning thing. And I'm personally speaking, I'm glad now that we can sit down and kind of have a conversation about it, and you can understand, or you understood like why it was so problematic at the time now. And it's all learning, man, and that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of people even till this day won't understand that because they want to remain willfully ignorant, and it's not a I don't understand why. There's this growing obsession with wanting to say the N-word nowadays too,
I hate it.
which is a
I hate it.
huge
I
thing.
hate it. I hate
And
it.
it's like even on like TikTok, I be seeing all these videos, even with the what's that country singers dude that basically just got caught saying it on camera.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. It's
Morgan,
whatever.
something another Morgan or
Yeah.
whatever. And it was just like he uses it in what he says is the same context as like a black person would use it. And not with the hard ER, but the A. What they're not realizing is they're essentially the same thing. The one is derived from, this just a simple change in letter.
I don't even feel
It's
comfortable saying it when it comes to like if I'm trying to say a lyric out loud, I
yeah,
will
and
always
that's
skip
the same
around
thing.
it because I just don't
Mhm.
feel comfortable saying it.
Yeah, it's that's the next thing too. Like even a lot of like black TikTokers are on TikTok basically saying like if white people want to say the N words in song lyrics, they should. And I'm thinking like, wait, no,
No,
what are you talking
no.
about? It's like even use which I don't even think this is like the greatest of examples, but like it's an example nonetheless. Think of it when you were young, right? And you would hear a song, and your mom would, if there's a cuss word in it, and there's a parent around there, like you better not say that word, right?
Hmm.
You were respectful enough not to say the cuss word within the song. You would kind of like skip over it and then sing the rest of the lyrics if there was a part that you knew that had a cuss word in it. Think of it as the same thing. Like it's easy to skip over it. It's not that hard. And I talked about it too, where I was like, I understand, the growing obsession in wanting to say the word because it's kind of been put out there. A lot of the things that's kind of been deemed like cool or popular kind of have been popularized by people of color. It for the most part, it just becomes mainstream when it's on somebody that's not a person of color, like like the Kim Kardashians, or when
Yeah,
when they take
yeah.
certain, what I mean, like when they take certain things and all of a sudden, oh, this is cool. For example, like the whole box braids issue, and it's like braids have been around since how long? And black people have been wearing it for so long, and all of a sudden, it's cool when Kim Kardashian wears it and
I
call it.
know.
Yeah, so it's like it's just little things like that. It's just like come on, like it's really not that hard to skip over the word.
No, and again, with the social medias being as strong and just in your face as they are, the encouragement, especially from people of color, that needs to
Mm-hmm.
stop because young generations are going to get miseducated that it's okay. And it's
Yeah,
just going to be a cycle that, again, where they think they're not coming from a harmful place and they'll just say it to the wrong person one day. And
yeah, exactly.
it's not something we should be instilled with.
Oh, definitely. Because the thing is, there are so many people that's kind of like forewarn them and let them know, like, hey, listen, like you're actually putting people's lives in danger, thinking that there's such thing as an N-word pass, and that's not the case. It's big misunderstanding. Yes, there are people of color who basically allow other like their white friends that they grew up with to say the N-word because they grew up around that stuff. And in all honesty, if that's okay with you, fine, but you have to let them know they're okay with saying that around you.
Yeah.
Just because they might have got the pass from you doesn't mean they got the pass from other persons of color. So you're potentially putting those people's lives in danger because nowadays it's just like there's a thing going around where you might get a black person said, "Oh, I'm not my ancestors," and what that means is I'm gonna beat your ass if you say the wrong thing around. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it is. So don't do that, man. That's all I'm telling you. People, like, don't do that. You're putting your friends in potential danger, and it's like it's not smart.
Well, and again, I think it goes back to education because even living in Canada with, let's say, such a big Native American presence, last
Exactly.
year I only recently learned the last residential school was opened in 1996. That's something that I feel education system failed me on, that I was a grown man when I found that out. In especially this region of Ontario that we live in, I'm 30-40 minute drive from a reservation, a native reservation. This is education we should be taught because it's a history we shouldn't ignore.
Oh yeah, it definitely still applies to the indigenous people over here as well too. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing that would apply. It's just more in the states for like for black people. It's more the hatred is stronger, or like black people are treated like worse over there compared to Canada, which kind of sweeps itself under the rug and kind of hides it a little bit. But it's there. For us over here, it's definitely the indigenous population and the Black population as well too. So, and there are such thing as Black Indigenous as well too, who it's like the double the hate, so which makes no sense. So it's weird how that's a thing. And I've always asked myself this question, and I wish somebody would be able to answer this. It's like, what has Black people done to deserve this much hate? Like, what have we done? You know what I mean? It's just like we were literally plucked from our continent, and our history stripped, our heritage stripped, and we had to create a whole new history and a whole new heritage and a whole new culture. And it's like we're still hated for it. And it's just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's weird to me.
Well, and it's absolutely something that's taught because like I was saying earlier, my godbrothers who were Jamaican, I was about pushing near 10 years old when they came to visit. I lived in a small town, like 1,000 people. And I remember when they came to visit around that time, I asked my mom and dad, why is everyone being mean? Like, why is
Mm-hmm.
everyone being mean to them? And that's when my parents gave me the talk of, well, your
Mm-hmm.
godbrothers are black. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know how their skin is a different color than yours? I'm like, sure. They're like, well, that's why everyone's being mean. I didn't understand it then. I don't
Yeah.
understand it now because, again, I wasn't raised with hate. It's not
Yeah.
something that I was taught. So, yeah, again, it's just, I can't answer that question for you because to me, even it's trivial and just malicious, disgusting thing.
Exactly. That's
And
true.
that's why I asked you, as allies, what can we do going forward? Because I think it's very important to support your friends of color, especially, like you said, media and history sweeping things under the rug. And I like that a lot of places are starting to take a stand and doing the same. I noticed on Twitch earlier today, for example, the whole top section is just, content from black creators right now. And I think a lot more platforms need to start doing that and showcasing that, but also not in the pandering way where, hey, we're casting this character as a person of color. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but does it affect the character?
And that could potentially pose a problem in the future because it's like, yes, I understand, like, Black people want representation and all that stuff, but it's like sometimes that person might not necessarily fit that role because the role wasn't written or isn't necessarily for them. So that's where it could potentially create a problem in the future and stuff like that. But no, definitely, I feel like, and it's also creating a problem with a lot of, like, like even like on TikTok, like I be seeing like a lot of huge like white content creators that be talking about how well, why do we have a Black History Month? Why don't we have a White History Month? And it's just like, well, why does Netflix have a Black creators part? And it's just like, well, where's the white text? And it's just like,
The,
that
the
is the
rest of the
default.
website. Yeah.
That is the default. The default is that. So what do you mean? Why don't we? You've had that, and you've been had that. That is literally the default setting for everything.
Yeah.
So what do
The
you get it,
reason we
man?
have a month is the reason we have a month. It's that.
It's
Yeah.
just, and they look over this thing, and you try to tell them that, and it's just like it just falls on deaf ears, and it's mad disheartening because it's like, yo, bro, like I'm not telling you this stuff to make you feel some type of way. I'm literally telling you this stuff because it affects me in a way, and it would be nice if you could just stop and listen. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, all right, well, there's only so much I can say to you before I get annoyed with not wanting to even converse with you or even try to educate you on anything. So
Hmm. Yeah. When for everyone listening, like I did prior to sitting down with Shane, obviously all topics we discussed today were ones I discussed and asked with him if they were okay because obviously a
mhm.
few things we discussed were of sensitive nature, but again, I wouldn't have felt comfortable asking him if he wasn't so outspoken and educational on his social media platforms about these topics. And I wanted to showcase that with the listeners today.
Yeah.
So we're kind of wrapping up here, but can we expect anything from you new music wise this year? I know Catering pretty much just came out, but do you have
Mm.
anything planned for this year?
I'm still recording and writing and mixing and stuff like that, but I've kind of just like I'll show snippets on like my Instagram or wherever for the most part. But what I decided to do was I've kind of been reading up on marketing and kind of like how to market myself and get myself out there. And one of the big things that caught my eye was, like new music or old music is new to new ears. And I was like, that's true. So I was kind of like gonna focus on pushing a lot of the older music, but with visuals. So I was kind of gonna hold off on, releasing any new music for a little bit. But that could change. That could change depending on how I feel. But for the most part, I've kind of just been focusing on creating visuals as soon as possible. But with the whole lockdown situation, I wasn't able to shoot the visuals as much as I wanted to. So with us coming off lockdown right now, my plan is to go from the first Deja Vu all the way up to Catering and shoot specific videos for those songs and just kind of release them and hopefully reach a wider audience with the visuals so that they could go back and listen to, what would be considered old music to us, but it's new to them. So that was one of the marketing strategies I've kind of been working on and putting a lot of my focus and stuff on. So that's what I'll be doing. But no, I'm definitely gonna still be recording and mixing and stuff like that. And as I said, if I'm feeling like I want to release something new, I'll just go ahead and release something new. Because like I said, I'm sitting on a whole bunch of music still. So this year, I'm probably still gonna work on hopefully getting like a full length album, because Deja Vu was supposed to be that, but then I broke it up into 2 sections and make it an EPs. But yeah, no, definitely the music is still going to be coming. I'm hoping to get a full length album where I can just, give people a good 16, 17 songs of just different feels and stuff like that. So each song is going to trigger something different in you, I hope, but still be me at the same time.
Well, as always, I'll post Shane's links to his music and social medias below. But I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today and having such a earnest and honest conversation with me, man.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. And, anytime you want to do this
I'm positive it's not the last. Yeah, man. This is probably the first of many.